challenges in 2024, including a devalued Naira, high inflation and soaring interest rates, significantly impacting the operations of manufacturers and small and medium-sized enterprises. In a recent statement, Nasima President Delioye remarked that these challenges tested the resolve and resilience of businesses in Nigeria. So this morning from Abeokuta in Ogun State, southwest Nigeria, I have Dr. Femi Egbesola, who is the President's Association of Small Business Owners in Nigeria. He joins me to talk about this. Thank you so much, Dr. Egbesola, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So how would you describe 2024 as a business owner and president of a business membership organization?
Well, 2024 is one of the very tough years for us, if not the toughest in recent times. And the reason for this is that we faced avalanche of challenges back to back. Remember that it started in 2023 with the removal of subsidy on petroleum products, then going to the issue of floating of the Naira, coming down to the issue of continuous raising NPR, making us have very high interest rates for loans from the banks, going down to the issue of electricity hike, going down to the issue of non-increment, really to say, as regards salary, meaning that the consumers have low purchasing power because their salaries are not increased, even when there are promises for new minimum wage in the country. We also have the issue of so many policy inconsistencies, particularly those that has to do with micro and small businesses. We have the issue of low foreign direct investment in the country, and this actually led to the death of a number of businesses. In fact, about 20% of businesses are recorded to have either become ailing or dead in 2024. And when you talk about 20%, that's going to almost 6 million businesses going under in 2024, and that's no good news.
Quite a number of factors you mentioned there, but then let's look at Naira devaluation. I'd like you to talk to us about the impact it had on your production costs and pricing strategies for this outgoing year.
I did not get the question. Are you talking about the Naira value?
Yes, the devaluation of the Naira, how it affected cost of operations and
the
pricing.
devaluation of the Naira all right. Well, it's two ways, really. The first side of the coin is that because of the devaluation of the Naira, most of our inputs are import dependent. We have to now begin to pay more for input for our production processes, leading to a sharp rise in the cost of our production and leading to cost of our finished product at the end of the day. And when the cost is high, we will definitely sell less because the consuming power of the consumers is already eroded. And at the same time, too, because of this high rise in the value of the Naira, it depletes our working capital. We are able to do less. Our production has to go down because we have lower funds to do businesses at this time. But the worst of it is that because the cost of production is so high and our products are now so very high when it comes to prices, it now encourages the influx of imported ones that are cheaper into the market, particularly for the Asian countries. So these Asian countries are now flooding our market with their product, which seems to become cheaper because of the rise in the value of the dollar here in Nigeria. But then the gain of it, which is the other side of the coin, is that it also helps us to now become more competitive globally. We are now able to export our products to some other parts of the country, and particularly in Africa through AfTA, and sometimes even to the US and the UK. And what this does for us is that because our product is now, our Naira is now devalued, our product becomes cheaper in the global market. And because it is cheaper, we are also able to sell and compete well with other products globally, and that translates to some form of funding and profit for us. Because eventually, when we have now earned foreign exchange, after selling our product and change it to a local currency in Naira, it becomes something that is good to take to the bank. So that's the two sides of the coin when it comes to the Naira devaluation.
So when you talk about
the impact is more negative.
Yeah, so when you talked about, rising cost of production and a year where we saw minimum wage rising to 70,000 Naira, affecting the private sector to a devalued Naira and all that, how would you say it impacted the consumer behavior in terms of purchasing power?
Yes, like I mentioned the other time, the purchasing power has become very reduced, in fact, close to the barest minimum. The average consumer now prioritize their purchases. They now do more of groceries, do more of food and beverages, and particularly those things that their day-to-day livelihood depend upon. Things that are luxury items now suffer so much because they are now at the bottom of the ladder. And what this means is that many companies that are folding up are those that are in that particular region, whereby their sector are not the daily needs of an average consumer. At the same time, too, when companies are unable to sell their products or their services, what this leads to is that they begin to also shut down their workforce. So it has led to a lot of job losses in 2024. But then at the same time, we have also become innovative in our way of now addressing this issue. One of it is that many of the manufacturers now have gone to go light in the sense that we now do small and light packages so that if the consumer cannot buy the big packages that we used to produce before, they can now make do with the very small size packages that are a bit cheaper. A lot of promotions are also going on to see how we can sell our product with some form of incentive so that cost consumers can still buy. There are also opportunity for consumers now to buy and pay later or buy it and structure the payment in an instrumental manner, all for a reason to remain afloat in business. We have also decided that as manufacturer, we will also engage technology, and technology is helping us to scale during this challenging time in 2024. And technology has made it possible for us to now send a product without necessarily going through all the hustles of the road and spending so much on transportation that we used to do before. And that has reduced costs and make it more easier for consumers to buy our products.
It's quite interesting that you have to make such adjustments and still yet have to deal with issues around interest rate hikes by the CBN. Let's talk about that. Let's look at your personal experience, how you've been able to deal or adjust your operations looking at that. We've seen the last increase by 25 basis points. And of course, we've seen a lot of talks around the CBN needing to either have a stay on it or reduce it, but then in their own wisdom, they had to do that. So when you look at that and how it has affected your business, how have you been able to manage?
Well, it's been very negative on us. The impact has been very negative on us, particularly those of us in the nano, micro, and small businesses. Large businesses have some form of a way of absorbing some of this high rates, high interest rate, and all of that. But for us, we do not. So it's very negatively impactful on us. But then what this has led to is that it's now very difficult for us to get funding from the regular banks. It's very, very difficult because our balance sheet does not support borrowing fund at the interest rate of 35% to 40%. At the same time, you also discover that the rate of bad debt in the bank books has gone high because many people, many businesses who have borrowed money will not repay back the loan because of this high interest rate. And I don't think that is good for us as a nation and even for businesses. But the other way around, we have decided to also be able to help ourselves, those of us who are in business. We've reverted one to strengthen our different cooperative societies that we have in different business membership organizations. Like for us in our own association, we've been able to get more funding to the cooperative so that members can now borrow a single digit interest rate from the cooperative instead of going to the banks. At the same time, too, we'll also look at how we can collaborate with some of the government development banks, like Bank of Industry and the rest, who still borrow out at single digit interest rate and see how we can open their doors to help our members to be able to receive funding at single digit interest rates. We went further again to see how we can attract investment and funding internationally. And we've been able to see some organizations, some NGOs that has come to Nigeria to now support SMEs, perhaps in terms of grants and at times in terms of loan, particularly single digit interest rate loan, to be able to support the teeming MSMEs that we have in the country. That's how we've been surviving. And the other way around is that we have also chosen to also cut down our cost of production so that we will not need too much funds to operate. One way of cutting for the cost of production is that we have chosen to do hybrid for our workers. Some of them are now working remotely. Not everybody comes to work, and that reduces our pay. And at the same time, we have to share some weight by reducing our our production capacity so that we can be able to cope with the limited fund we have with us. I've also went further to ensure that we look for alternative energy instead of relying solely on electricity so that cost of production can also come down and reduce the number of the quantity of fund we need for our businesses. We've also been able to go as far as ensuring that we provide what we call e-commerce platforms for our members, particularly those who could not now pay for shops, pay for offices, where they can now sell their product. We embrace e-commerce platform where you can now display your wares, your products, and sell, and you have less cost selling those products. Many of us have also come together to do what we call contract production. Contract production in the sense that you don't really need to go to your factory to produce again. If you have 10 people producing pure water, for example, 10 of them can come and use one particular facility for their production, and that reduces costs. We also have shared offices, shared facilities for our members, whereby you don't really need to go and rent offices again. One office can serve for 10, 15, 20 businesses together, and they share the facility and reduce costs, thereby not really needing as much as fund as they used to do before. These are some of the innovative ways we are trying to cope with so many challenges we have, including these very high interest rates from the banks.
In all of the loan lenders that you listed, I didn't hear you say governments. I mean, I want to believe that the government did do something for the manufacturing sector in 2024. I remember the 50,000 Naira that was said to have been handed down to business owners and some sort of other interventions. So you are going to answer that anyway. Let's quickly go on a very short break. I'd like to get your perspective if the government did do something critical for the sector. Do stay with us. We'll be back. Well, we have been looking at the economic challenges that has bedeviled the manufacturing industry in Nigeria in 2024. And of course, how that is going to affect what will be happening in 2025. Maybe there are some strategies or cost-cutting measures that the players within that industry can employ to help them stay afloat and, of course, remain profitable. We've been talking to Dr. Femi Egbesola, who is the President, Association of Small Business Owners in Nigeria. Yes, Dr. Egbesola, like I said earlier, you didn't mention the government in terms of those who provided assistance to the manufacturing industry while you were talking. I'd like to find out from you if there was anything concrete that they did to help the industry stay afloat.
Yes, I did mention it in my submission the other time that one of those doors we tried to open to get cheaper funding was some of the development banks, and I did mention Bank of Industry. Bank of Industry has been able to provide some form of funding support at a single-digit interest rate, particularly for those in the manufacturing sector. But if you ask me, it's still a small drop in the ocean that you may not really see as very impactful, going by the population of the MSMEs we have and the kind of intervention that Bank of Industry can do. Coming down to government in general, you will discover that the president made a pronouncement sometimes in October 2023 that there's going to be some form of intervention fund for particularly the MSMEs, including the nano sector. That did not come to light until sometimes in the middle of this year, when the nano sector were given 50,000 Naira as grant. But if you ask me, what will 50,000 Naira do with the kind of inflation and the interest rate we have in Nigeria now? It really is more or less an handout than a business support, if you ask me. That's not the kind of intervention we're looking for in the MSME ecosystem. But then, towards the end of the year, particularly in November, the federal government announced that 1 million Naira will now be given out as a soft loan at a single-digit interest rate to SMEs so that they can have it to support their funding needs. At a point, the 1 million Naira was increased to 5 million Naira per obligor. And as we speak today, quite a number of MSMEs have applied for the loan. I'm not sure that disbursements have started because I've not had any report of anybody telling us that they've received any form of disbursement from the fund. Perhaps if it is disbursed next year, we can now begin to talk about the impact of that particular intervention. Outside that, I've not been able to see any form of intervention when it comes to funding from government, particularly to the MSMEs. And that gives room for a lot of improvement when it comes to funding. Government needs to pay more than the usual attention to the MSME sector and ensure that they do everything that is possible to make sure that this sector scale and is sustainable. One of the critical challenge, according to the survey and data we have for 2024, is that the major need of MSMEs is finance, and if finance is not taken care of, MSMEs will continue to ail and continue to slumber. So government needs to do more in terms of finding ways to fund MSMEs. And when we are talking of government, it's not going to be left to the federal government alone. State governments also must come up with strategies that will help them to be able to support the MSMEs in their different states and also by extension, the different local government that makes up the states. It's important to do so. Some state government are already doing that. For example, Lagos State is having a particular agency that is funding MSME at a single-digit interest rate. That should be a model that every other state should also copy. Everything should not be left to the state government alone. I also feel that because the MSME are the engine of growth of the economy, bigger organizations, larger companies and corporations should also include it as part of their CSR to support MSME with capacity building and funding so that they can also grow and become medium and metamorphose from small to medium and medium to large companies over time. It is important to do so. I also feel that government too should continue to look at ways to woo international investors and NGOs to come and support the MSME sector in Nigeria. It should be that every hand should be on deck to ensure that funding is made affordable and accessible to the MSME, because that is the lifeblood of that ecosystem, if we want that ecosystem to.
You've expressly stressed on funding for the sector. So what do you make of the tax reform bills? That's quite controversial, I must say, within the balance of discourse. How much of a relief do you think it will bring or provide for businesses?
Well, if this new tax bill see the light of the day, eventually, I think it is going to bring a lot of relief to the MSME ecosystem. It's business friendly. So many of our agitation have been addressed and resolved with that national tax bill that is being proposed. For example, it talks about tax exemption for those whose turnover are below 50 million. And if you look at our demography in Nigeria when it comes to the business space, 87% of the MSME sector are made of the nano and the micro. And the nano and the micro are those whose turnover are less than 50 million naira per annum, meaning that about 87 to 90% of businesses will be exempted from tax. And that to us is a big deal. Another thing is that tax are now being reduced from over 100 taxes to 6 taxes. If it is just 6, it is a good news for us because you can identify the number of taxes you want to pay, how much it is, where to pay it, and how to go about paying it. And that to us is another body taken away from us if it is approved. We also discovered that so many sectors now have VAT relief. They attract zero VAT, particularly those that has to do with small businesses and even the common man, the poor. Those are at the bottom of the ladder. In that proposed tax bill, you see that transportation, health, education, food, agriculture, electricity, and all of that, and quite a number of imported products are all now tax free when it comes to VAT. And that to us is a big deal. Before now, one of the issues we have is resolving tax issues because the last arbiter will have to be the court, and when you go to the court in the next 2-3 years, we still be on the case, dragging the issue. But the new tax bill is recommending a tax ombudsman, whereby there's an office where you can address your tax issues, and within few days, 7 days to be specific, those tax issues are resolved. Those are very good news for us. And I feel that if this bill can see the light of the day, it is really going to stimulate a lot of micro and small businesses and help them to grow and scale. So our prayer is that even with all the agitation, the bill see the light of the day, come to be law, and become what we are going to benefit from come 2025 onward.
All right, Dr. Femi Egbesola, President, Association of Small Business Owners in Nigeria. Thank you so much for sharing so much optimism and helping us understand what needs to be done to improve the manufacturing industry in Nigeria. It was nice talking to you.
Thank you for the opportunity and compliments of the season.